Have you ever wondered why the men who seem untouchable around women are usually the same men who once had their hearts shattered? You've seen him before. He walks into a room and instantly, the energy shifts. The barista laughs too hard at a simple joke. A woman in the corner straightens her posture without even realizing. Another steals a glance, bites her lip, then hides behind her phone like she just caught herself in a secret. Within minutes, the whole room tilts toward him, and you sit there watching, with that mix of curiosity, admiration, and maybe even frustration. The question rises again, why him and not me? Because let's be honest, he isn't richer than you. He isn't better looking. He isn't some celebrity or genius, and he's not even trying that hard. Yet somehow, women orbit him like planets caught in his gravity. Here's the truth. No one says out loud he wasn't born like this. He wasn't handed some hidden advantage. He was built like this, piece by piece. Scar by scar, forged through rejection, hardened by betrayal. The most dangerous man, and isn't the bad boy. And it's not the rich guy either. It's the man who once loved so deeply it destroyed him, and then turned that pain into armor. If you haven't met him yet, trust me, you will. What you're looking at isn't charm. It isn't natural charisma. It's scar tissue wrapped in confidence. He isn't magnetic because he's been loved. He's magnetic because he was crushed by love and rebuilt himself from the wreckage. Every smile, every smooth line, every ounce of presence, it all comes from pain. Pain that didn't just crush him, it remade him. And that's why he seems untouchable. Because he already survived the one thing that destroys most men being broken by love. The man who learned to live without love became impossible to live without. But this transformation didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't begin with the confident man you see before you. The truth is, men like him rarely start out this way. They don't begin as smooth talkers or manipulators. Most of them begin as something far more innocent. Hopeless romantics. They believe in soulmates. They believe in fairy tale endings. They believe that if you're loyal, respectful, and genuine, if you give her your heart without hesitation, you'll be rewarded with love. So they show up with flowers on the first date. They write long, heartfelt messages. They remember the small details, the things she likes, the things she fears. They pour their whole soul into the hope that love is enough. But instead of being loved, they get ignored. Instead of being chosen, they get replaced. And instead of being valued, they hear the most devastating line a man can ever hear. You're just too nice. That's the moment the ground cracks beneath him. Because everything he believed about love collides with reality. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the unbearable tension when your beliefs are destroyed by your experience. And in that collision, something inside him breaks. He doesn't lose his heart because he's weak. He loses it because he gave it to someone who didn't deserve it. Now he has two choices. He can keep believing in the illusion, keep living as the good guy who gets nothing but heartbreak, or he can throw away the script he was taught and start searching for the truth about how attraction really works. And the shift doesn't usually happen after a small disappointment. No, it takes something far sharper, a betrayal so final, so brutal, that it kills the man he used to be. Maybe it's the girlfriend who leaves him for his best friend. Maybe it's the fiancé who cheats with a man who barely cares. Or maybe it's the woman who swore she loved him, only to vanish the second someone better came along. Whatever the story, It's the same lesson delivered with surgical cruelty. Your devotion doesn't guarantee her loyalty. I call this moment the final betrayal. It's not just heartbreak, it's transformation through fire. Because once you've been cut that deep, you can never go back to who you were before. The naive romantic dies in that moment, and in his place, a different man begins to emerge. A man who no longer plays by the rules he was taught. A man who stops taking women at their words and starts watching what they respond to. A man who studies attraction law, not as a dreamer, but as a scientist dissecting reality. This is the birth of the romantic refugee, the man who no longer seeks safety in illusions, but survival in truth. He doesn't avoid love because he's afraid of it. He avoids illusions because he's already survived them. Once this awakening occurs, something inside him dies, and something new begins. He stops playing by emotion and starts playing by analysis. His heart, once soft and open, turns into a laboratory. Every interaction with a woman becomes data. Every rejection becomes feedback. Every heartbreak becomes a lesson written in fire. He starts to notice things he used to miss. When he's too available, interest fades. But when he pulls back slightly, when he leaves a little space, women lean in closer. He realizes that endless compliments don't create desire, but playful teasing does. He sees how mystery draws women in faster than pouring out his entire life story. This is when he shifts from being a believer in fantasy to a student of reality. He stops asking, "What do women say they want?" and starts asking the question that actually matters. What do they respond to? That shift changes everything. At first, his new approach looks cold, detached, as if he doesn't care anymore. But ironically, that detachment makes him more magnetic, because when he's observing instead of chasing, women feel his calm confidence. When he's testing instead of begging for approval, they lean in harder. He learns a painful truth most men never accept. Attraction doesn't follow morality. Kindness doesn't guarantee desire. Devotion doesn't secure loyalty. Good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. And so the man who once bled for love becomes something entirely different, an architect of desire. He studies patterns the way a scientist studies chemical reactions. He experiments with timing, tone, and presence. He learns when to reveal himself, when to stay silent, when to push, and when to pull away. Women sense it even if they can't explain it. His energy feels different. He's not chasing validation anymore. He's not desperate for an outcome. He's playing a higher game, one where he doesn't need approval to feel whole. This is the birth of strategic empathy, the ability to understand women not from a place of worship or resentment, but from curiosity. He's not trying to win them over anymore. He's trying to understand how they work. And here's the paradox. The more he detaches from needing them, the more they're drawn to him. The less he tries to please, the more he pleases. The moment he stops chasing fantasy, reality starts chasing him. He doesn't play hard to get. He became hard to get. This is the first real taste of power. Not the power of manipulation, but the power of understanding. The romantic refugee has become something society never prepared him for, a man who sees clearly. And clarity in a world built on illusion is magnetic. However, this analytical phase changes how he sees women. But what truly transforms him runs even deeper. Because heartbreak doesn't just disappear with time. It doesn't simply fade like an old bruise. No, when the wound is deep enough, it hardens. It leaves a mark. And just like scar tissue on the body, it becomes tougher than the skin it replaced. Less sensitive, less flexible, but far more resistant to damage. That's exactly what happens to his psychology. The old, naive version of him, the boy who thought love was about proving himself worthy, that part is gone. In its place grows something harder, smarter, sharper. To the outside world, it looks like confidence, the way he carries himself, the calm in his voice, the way rejection seems to bounce off him like rain hitting steel. People look at him and think, he must have been born this way. But inside, he knows the truth. It isn't natural confidence. It's self-protection. It's the armor forged in betrayal. He doesn't fear rejection because he's fearless. He doesn't fear it because he's already been destroyed by it once. He no longer places his worth in a single woman's hands. He no longer sees rejection as the end of his story. And he no longer confuses blind devotion with actual attraction. Women read this detachment as strength, and they're pulled toward it. Because most men still beg. Most men still chase. Most men still crumble the moment a woman withholds her approval. He doesn't avoid pain because he's afraid. He avoids it because he's already survived it once. But not him. This stage of transformation is what I call defensive mastery. It isn't talent. It isn't natural charm. It's survival. The survival of a man who was forced to adapt or die emotionally. The survival of someone who's been burned enough times to know exactly how not to get burned again. He's not untouchable because he's strong. He's untouchable because he's already been broken. And here's the paradox: what began as protection now looks like fear. Women sense it even before they understand it. They feel his steadiness. They feel his refusal to be shaken. They feel that he could walk away at any moment, and that makes them lean in harder. Because in a world where most men beg for scraps of validation, the man who doesn't need it is irresistible. Yet this defensive mastery gives him armor, and what really sets him apart is something even more profound. Because when you've been burned before, you start noticing the details most men miss. You learn to read the subtle shifts, the tone of her voice, the pause before she answers, the way she looks at you when she thinks you're not paying attention. You can tell when she's testing you, when she's seeking validation, and when she's just being polite. He sees the cracks between words and behavior. He sees the gap between what women say they want and what they actually respond to. And once you see that gap clearly, you can never unsee it. Most men never make it this far. They project their fantasies onto women. They hear her words and take them at face value. They live in hope instead of reality. But the romantic refugee has lived through too much pain to keep playing that game. He no longer listens just to what she says, he listens to what she means. And here's the part that makes him dangerous: women feel it. For the first time in her life, she feels truly seen. Not for her mask, not for her performance, but for the deeper layers she hides from everyone else. And that kind of recognition is intoxicating. He doesn't see through women because he's gifted. He sees through them because pain taught him to look deeper. It's not about manipulation. It's not about tricks. It's about a man who understands what others can't even perceive. That's what makes him magnetic. Because when a woman feels like a man can see her truth, she can't help but be drawn closer. This is the gift of scars. pain carved into wisdom, betrayal sharpened into clarity, heartbreak turned into insight. And that insight gives him a kind of X-ray vision, an ability to look past appearances and read the patterns underneath. It's not something he chose. It's something he was forced to learn. And now, it's one of his greatest powers. Building on this emotional archaeology, there's another skill that emerges from the ashes of his former self, one that gives him unprecedented control in his interactions. Strategic indifference is the ability to walk the razor's edge, to care just enough to be engaging, but never so much that he becomes needy. It's the balance most men can never master, because most men either give too little and seem cold, or give too much and drown in desperation. But the man forged by betrayal knows this instinctively. He's been destroyed once by caring too much, so he'll never make that mistake again. Now he can enjoy her company without needing her validation. He can pursue her without chasing her. He can like her without depending on her. And paradoxically, that balance makes him irresistible. Why? Because nothing kills attraction faster than desperation. Women can smell it instantly, even when it's hidden beneath charm, gifts, or polite smiles. Desperation says, "My value depends on you." And that weight repels them. But indifference, real indifference, not the fake kind, speaks a different language. It says, "I'm whole, with or without you." And that energy is magnetic, because deep down, women don't want a man who needs them to breathe. They want a man who can breathe on his own, yet still chooses to share his oxygen. This is the paradox most men never understand. The less you need her, the more she wants you. He doesn't withhold his heart to be cruel. He withholds it to survive. Strategic indifference isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's about knowing that no single woman has the power to make or break your worth. And when a man carries that truth in his presence, it shows in his tone, in his body language, in the way he can walk away if the energy isn't right. And here's the key. Women know it's real, because he didn't learn it from a book. He didn't pick it up as a technique. And he learned it in the hardest way possible, by once giving too much, by once breaking himself open for someone who didn't care. And now that pain has calcified into balance. His indifference isn't calculated. It's calibrated by pain. That balance is his quiet power. And that power is why she leans in closer, even as he leans back. However, if strategic indifference is his armor, then here's where things get complicated. That same armor hides something deeper. Because wounded men don't just become protected, they also become more vulnerable. It sounds contradictory, but it's true. On one hand, heartbreak builds walls. It forces him to guard himself, to never again hand over his soul without caution. But on the other hand, because he's been through real heartbreak, he now carries a depth that men untouched by pain will never know. He can connect emotionally in ways most men can't even imagine. This is the paradox. The scars that make him harder to destroy are the same scars that allow him to feel more deeply. And women sense it. They feel the quiet weight in his presence. They feel the calm strength that only comes from someone who has survived loss. They know, even without words, that he has lived through pain and carries it with dignity. That mix, emotional depth wrapped in independence, is magnetic. It makes him far more attractive than men who've never been broken, because she knows he isn't shallow. He isn't pretending. He has lived. He's not mysterious by choice. He's mysterious by necessity. But here's the catch. The same armor that draws women in also keeps them at a distance. She wants to reach inside, to touch the depth she feels in him. But she runs into walls he doesn't even realize he built. And that tension, wanting to get closer, yet never fully being able to, is what makes women both addicted to him and endlessly frustrated by him. It's the duality of the wounded man, stronger than ever, yet forever marked, capable of connection, yet careful with trust. The paradox is what makes him irresistible and untouchable at the same time. But this leads to an unexpected consequence. His defensive mastery, the armor that makes him magnetic, also becomes his cage. It allows him to attract more women than ever before. He can spark desire. He can hold their attention. He can keep options open with ease. On the surface, it looks like victory. But behind that surface, something is missing. Because his walls are so strong, he struggles to let anyone in deeply. He can build endless connections, yet intimacy often feels hollow. He wins the game, but loses the prize. He doesn't avoid intimacy because he's incapable. He avoids it because he remembers what it cost him last time. This is what I call the success trap. It's the stage where the wounded man becomes too good at protecting himself. He never bleeds again, but he also never feels the fullness of love again. The relationships look successful. Women want him, chase him, admire him. But inside, he feels the emptiness of knowing he's never really opening up. Some men get stuck here permanently. They become the emotionally unavailable men. The ones who hurt others the same way they were once hurt. They pass their pain forward, creating new heartbreaks, continuing the same cycle that broke them in the first place. But others evolve. They learn that true strength isn't just in building walls, but in knowing when to lower them. They discover that protection without connection is another kind of prison. And slowly, carefully, they begin to rise into a higher form of mastery. The success trap is where most men stop. They master attraction. They shield themselves from pain, but they never taste the kind of love they once dreamed of. They protect themselves so well that they end up imprisoned by their own defenses. But a few men, very few, evolve beyond this. They reach the highest level of transformation, something I call selective vulnerability. This is the ability to keep the armor on for the wrong women, but take it off for the right one. The ability to hold the line with those who play games, yet open the gates when a woman proves herself through loyalty, consistency, and emotional maturity. And that is when the wounded man becomes the most powerful of all. Not because he hides behind walls, but because he knows when to lower them. He isn't naive anymore. He isn't blindly trusting. He isn't giving his heart away just to anyone. But when the rare woman shows herself to be real, authentic, trustworthy, devoted, he can open his heart again without losing himself. This is not weakness. This is mastery. Because true strength isn't just about never getting hurt. It's about being able to risk hurt again. But this time with wisdom. He doesn't close his heart because he's cold. He opens it selectively because he's learned what it's worth. The man who reaches selective vulnerability is the man women can feel in their bones. He is strong enough not to need them, but wise enough to let them in, independent enough to walk away, but grounded enough to stay when it matters, scarred enough to carry depth, but healed enough to share it. And that combination, strength with openness, scars with softness, is the rarest of all. It's what turns the wounded man into not just a survivor, but into the kind of partner who can finally build the love he once thought was impossible. So remember this: the man who seems effortlessly confident, the one who moves through women like gravity itself, he wasn't born that way. He was broken that way. His strength didn't come from luck, but from rejection that cut him open, betrayal that tore him apart, and heartbreak that forced him to rebuild into something harder, sharper, and unshakable. He's not confident because he's never been hurt. He's confident because he survived being destroyed. Every master was once a disaster. Every confident man was once a boy who gave too much and got nothing back. And every dangerous man you admire carries scars he learned to turn into weapons. He stopped believing in fairy tales and became one himself. The truth is, you will be hurt. That's not optional. It's guaranteed. The only choice you have is this: will that hurt destroy you, or will it transform you? Because in the end, pain is the greatest teacher a man will ever have. And the men who rise from it, the ones who learn instead of collapse, become the kind of men the world cannot ignore. If this message hit you, if you've felt the sting of rejection and know deep down it's shaping you into something stronger, then don't let it go. Subscribe, share this truth, and join the movement of men who refuse to stay broken. Because the choice is always the same: slavery or sovereignty, illusion or freedom, and only you can decide which man you'll become. Thank you for watching. Drop a comment below. What's the biggest struggle you want us to break down next? Let's build a brotherhood of men who rise above confusion and reclaim their power. See you in the next video.